Good evening and welcome all. Tonight, I invite you to buckle up, settle in, and prepare for a journey through some of the most unsettling, spine chilling experiences that only those who spend long hours behind the wheel of a big rig can truly understand. These aren't tales plucked from fiction or embellished for shock value. No, these are moments drawn from reality, from long stretches of asphalt that wind through desolate deserts, dense forests, and lonely mountain passes. Tonight, you're coming along for the ride. 10 stories that will keep you glancing over your shoulder, maybe even double-checking your locks. If you're sensitive to graphic or unsettling imagery, consider this a fair warning. Some of what you're about to hear is as raw and unfiltered as it gets. The road has a way of exposing humanity's fragility, the unpredictability of fate, and the darkness that often lingers just beyond our peripheral vision. Our first story begins in the late hours of a quiet summer night somewhere in the northern deserts. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated only by the pale glow of my headlights slicing through the blackness. I had been driving for nearly 10 hours, my mind focused, muscles tense. The constant hum of the engine and tires on asphalt, my only companions. A long day of deliveries had left me drained, and the thought of finally reaching the next truck stop kept me pushing forward. It was in these long stretches of solitude that the road often decides to test you. A sense of unease began to creep into my thoughts. Subtle at first, like a shadow just at the edge of perception. And then, just as I was rounding a familiar bend, I saw her. A young woman standing alone beside the roadside, illuminated briefly by my headlights. She was beautiful, with long dark hair as cascading over her shoulders, a picture of vulnerability in the otherwise barren landscape. She asked for a ride, her voice soft, yet urgent. Something about her felt off, but I shrugged the unease aside. I had been on the road long enough to know that the road could be lonely, that people sometimes needed help. I pulled over. She climbed into the passenger seat, polite, reserved, only asking a few simple questions about where I was headed. Her presence was almost hypnotic, a calm amidst the tension of the night. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was anything but ordinary. An hour later, she pointed to a secluded house nestled at the edge of a small grove. "This is my stop," she said, her voice calm, almost wistful. Before stepping out, she turned, her eyes meeting mine. "Be careful on those mountain roads," she whispered. And then, almost casually, she kissed me on the cheek, promising she would be waiting when I returned. The encounter left me with a strange cold shiver. Something about her lingered in the cab long after she disappeared behind the heavy wooden doors. The winding mountain pass ahead was treacherous, with sharp curves and steep cliffs. I drove cautiously, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. The kiss, the warning. Days later, curiosity got the better of me. I returned to the secluded house, expecting perhaps a family to greet me, a mundane explanation to put the encounter to rest. Instead, I was met by an older man whose face drained of color when I described the young woman. She had passed years earlier in a tragic accident on that very mountain pass. The cold realization that the presence I had felt was something beyond explanation left me shaken. The road, in its infinite indifference, had allowed me to witness something that defied the boundaries of life and death. Our second story shifts to Cornwall, England, in the spring of 1995. A man driving a low-loader truck, hauling a mechanical digger across narrow back roads, encountered an ordinary oversight that would unleash chaos. A locking pin, or perhaps a secondary catch, had failed. The digger's arm, initially stable, began to sway dangerously with each turn. By the time he rounded a blind bend, the bucket sheared through the roof of oncoming vehicles like a mechanical predator. 5 people perished in seconds, their lives extinguished by the collision of human error and mechanical failure. The driver, traumatized and unaware, was later committed to psychiatric care, haunted by visions and guilt that would never leave him. This story underscores a chilling truth. Sometimes, horror does not come from intent, but from the fragility of routine. A small slip that transforms ordinary life into tragedy. From mechanical terror, we move to a more subtle, yet no less terrifying, encounter. My great-uncle, a seasoned truck driver accustomed to the emptiness of rural roads, spotted a cardboard box in his lane. Habitually, he would have ignored it, rolling over the obstacle without thought. But this time, instinct urged him to swerve. From that unassuming box emerged a child no older than 5 or 6, who dusted himself off and walked away as though nothing had happened. It was a fleeting, surreal moment, a brush with fate that could easily have ended in tragedy. The road, silent and indifferent, had presented him with a choice, one that could have been fatal if ignored. The fourth story finds us in the deserts of California, late at night, parked beneath the stars, practicing astrophotography atop a reefer unit. The solitude, meant to be peaceful, was punctuated by a series of noises that defied explanation. Scratches in the brush, whispers in the darkness, the faint unlocking of a trailer door. Heart-hammering, I fled the scene, leaving behind the mystery that would haunt my thoughts long after. The road has a way of amplifying the ordinary into the extraordinary, turning silence into suspense, shadows into threats. We continue with a story from the Southwest, involving my brother, who pulled into a remote rest stop on a scorching afternoon. Nearby, a middle-aged woman was unloading several small dogs from a bright pink Jeep. Minutes later, she lost control, her vehicle rolling multiple times, scattering debris across the road. Despite the chaos, Her focus remained entirely on the well-being of her pets, a haunting contrast to the devastation surrounding her. This story captures the fragile balance between chaos and instinct, the way moments of humanity can persist amidst disaster. Next, we return to a more personal experience of mine, picking up PVC and cast iron pipes on the outskirts of Cedar City. The yard, usually desolate at night, became a stage for the unexplainable. A tapping, a groan, a dark silhouette standing motionless between trailers. Rational thought failed to account for the unease pressing into my chest. I chose safety, waiting until daylight to continue my work. A small acknowledgement that some places on the road carry a weight beyond comprehension. The seventh story occurs deep in the Arizona desert, miles from civilization. Exhausted, I slept in my sleeper cab, only to awaken at 2 a.m. to scratching outside my window. 15 minutes of rhythmic, deliberate taps kept me frozen, heart racing, before vanishing as abruptly as they had begun. Morning revealed footprints leading directly to my truck and back into the desert, a haunting testament to presence and absence, action and inaction, all coexisting on the same stretch of road. In Monterrey, Mexico, my cousin Jeremiah had an encounter that blurred the line between the natural and the grotesque. While driving early in the morning along Blackwood Highway, a figure with a pig's head stood in the middle of the road, lunging at his truck with inhuman strength. The encounter ended with him fleeing, shaken to his core. The image etched permanently into his memory. The surreal horror, grounded in reality, demonstrates how the road can twist perception and confront drivers with threats both tangible and inexplicable. By now, you may notice a pattern. The road is a canvas for fear, unpredictability, and the fragility of life. Each story, though unique in its specifics, underscores the same fundamental truths. Danger is omnipresent, and our instincts often serve as the only shield against disaster. Whether it's human error, mechanical failure, or the eerie unknown, truckers bear witness to moments that can't be unseen. Experiences that linger long after the journey has ended. Finally, one of the most harrowing stories comes from the snowy heights of Snowshoe Mountain, Pennsylvania. A flatbed truck lost control, jackknifing violently, its driver trapped with a black bear that had smashed through the windshield. The ensuing chaos was instantaneous and brutal. A state trooper intervened, saving lives where possible. But the scene remained a stark reminder of the road's capacity to combine natural peril with human vulnerability. The bear, the truck, the frantic rescue, all exist in a fleeting intersection of horror that leaves an indelible mark on all who witness it. The night stretches on, and the road waits for no one. These stories are not merely tales. They are records of what happens when human beings confront danger, chance, and the inexplicable. They are accounts that remind us of mortality, unpredictability, and the thin line that separates routine from catastrophe. Some might call it luck, others' fate. But every driver who has traveled the long highways knows that horror can appear at any moment, in forms both mundane and extraordinary. The road is patient, indifferent, and eternal, yet, within its shadows, stories of terror emerge, waiting to be told, waiting to grip your imagination and refuse to let go. The night air carried a chill as I made my way down the long stretch of highway, heading into the heart of the Southwest. The desert landscape stretched endlessly, dotted with occasional saguaro cacti and the distant glow of forgotten towns. It was one of those nights where silence presses against your ears, amplifying every sound. The faint creak of the cab, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of wind stirring loose gravel. On nights like these, the mind begins to wander, often drifting into darker, more unsettling territory. And that's when the road can play its cruelest tricks. One evening, my cousin Jeremiah and I decided to team up for a long haul, transporting a load of steel coils across the borderlands. The stretch between the desolate towns of New Mexico and Arizona is notorious among truckers, not for bad roads or tight curves, but for what lurks in the shadows when the sun sinks below the horizon. Halfway through the journey, around midnight, we stopped at a nondescript rest area to stretch our legs. The lot was empty except for a lone rusted-out trailer parked against the far edge. A low fog had begun to roll in, hugging the asphalt like a living thing. As we stepped out, a figure appeared from the mist. An old man, hunched over, dragging something heavy behind him. His movement was deliberate, almost predatory, and yet there was something familiar in the rhythm of his shuffle. We instinctively drew back, unsure if we were witnessing a harmless vagabond or something far more sinister. As he drew closer, we realized the weight he was dragging was a battered dolly stacked with cardboard boxes. Nothing extraordinary, until one box slid, spilling its contents. A collection of old, rusted tools that clattered like bones against the concrete. The sound echoed unnaturally, reverberating off the walls of the empty lot. My cousin and I exchanged glances. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us wanted to break the silence that had become almost sacred, a fragile barrier between us and the unknown. We climbed back into our trucks, keeping a careful watch as the figure slowly disappeared into the fog. The road ahead felt heavier somehow, each mile stretching longer than it should. Hours later, we reached the border checkpoint near Tamaulipas. Everything appeared normal until the officers gesturing us through froze, staring at something beneath the road. It was a tunnel, unmarked and unexpected, stretching beneath the asphalt like a hidden vein in the earth. Armed men moved silently within it, their faces obscured, their intentions unreadable. My cousin and I sped past, hearts hammering, eyes wide. We never learned who they were, or why they were there, and perhaps it's better that way. Some encounters are meant to remain a mystery, lingering in the corners of memory, haunting your thoughts long after The lights of the checkpoint fade behind you. Another story comes from the desolate stretches of California's SR 58 late at night, when sleep tugs at your eyelids and the desert feels infinite. I had parked alongside a lonely stretch of asphalt, eager to rest while waiting for a rescheduled pickup. The stars above were brilliant, a clear reminder of how vast the world can be. But in that darkness, isolation can twist perception. As I fiddled with my camera, trying to adjust the aperture for astrophotography, a sound pierced the stillness, a rustling in the brush, subtle at first, then unmistakably deliberate. I froze, heart pounding, scanning the shadows with a flashlight, but found nothing. Minutes passed, each one stretching impossibly long. Then came a voice, soft, almost casual, calling out a single word. Hey! The rational mind wants to explain such things away. Perhaps a wanderer, an animal, a trick of acoustics, but instinct tells a different story. My hands shook as I considered the possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. The trailer door, which I had left unlocked, shifted slightly under the weight of unseen presence. Adrenaline surged, and I leaped to safety, racing back into the cab, locking the doors and fleeing into the darkness. The encounter left me with a lasting impression of vulnerability. A reminder that the road at night can conceal intentions, entities, or dangers beyond comprehension. In the Southwest, accidents and misfortune often intertwine with the inexplicable. My brother, another long-haul driver, shared an incident that continues to haunt him. He had stopped at a remote rest stop, unaware that a woman unloading her dogs from a vibrant pink Jeep would become part of an unforgettable scene. Distracted, she lost control, her vehicle flipping multiple times, scattering her pets and debris across the desert highway. My brother rushed to assist, witnessing her focus entirely on her animals even as her own life hung precariously in the balance. Emergency responders arrived, tending to the human survivor while the dogs lay lifeless. A stark illustration of tragedy and instinct colliding. The surreal, almost cinematic horror of that moment never leaves a witness unchanged. The road is not merely a stage for accidents. It's a theater for the uncanny. In Cedar City, Utah, I encountered a yard where strange occurrences defied rational explanation. While securing a load of pipes at night, I noticed shadows shifting between trailers, accompanied by low, guttural sounds that seemed to echo from nowhere. A tall silhouette, motionless and watching, appeared without warning. Rationality faltered in the presence of something so tangible yet unidentifiable. I waited until dawn to proceed, acknowledging that some experiences demand patience and caution. That curiosity can be dangerous when the unknown watches back. The Arizona desert offers its own brand of terror. Exhausted, I had parked in a dirt turnabout miles from the nearest town. Around 2 a.m., scratching sounds emerged outside my window, persistent and rhythmic, as though testing my nerves. The night stretched endlessly, every gust of wind amplifying the tension. 15 minutes passed before the noises abruptly ceased, leaving a hollow silence that pressed against my eardrums. When morning came, I discovered footprints leading from the brush to my truck, then vanishing back into the desert. The mystery was complete. The presence, unseen but undeniable, remained a lingering reminder that isolation on the road is never truly empty. In Monterrey, Mexico, my cousin Jeremiah faced an encounter that bordered on the grotesque. Early in the morning, a figure wearing what appeared to be a pig's head stood in the middle of the road. Its movements were deliberate, terrifying, almost unnatural as it lunged toward his truck. Panic drove him forward, heart hammering, and he escaped, the image forever etched into his memory. Encounters like these blur the line between the tangible and the surreal, leaving a mark that no amount of time can erase. Back in Pennsylvania, on Snowshoe Mountain, a flatbed truck veered out of control on icy roads. The driver was trapped inside with a black bear that had smashed through the windshield. Blood and fur intertwined in a scene of unimaginable chaos. State troopers intervened, yet the moment remained a stark illustration of vulnerability. Man, machine, and wildness colliding in an unforgiving moment on an indifferent stretch of highway. Witnessing the aftermath, drivers are reminded that life on the road is unpredictable, raw, and often terrifying. Finally, the desert stretches are not always hostile due to natural or mechanical threats alone. Human malice, unexplainable occurrences, and the shadowy presence of unknown entities combine to form a unique kind of horror experienced by long-haul drivers. The stories told here, while disparate in specifics, share a common thread. The road exposes the fragile nature of life, the unexpected consequences of decisions, and the ever-present possibility that the next turn may reveal something wholly unanticipated. Drivers learn quickly that vigilance, instinct, and a healthy respect for the unknown are essential for survival. But even these offer no guarantee against what the road may bring. The first few hours of night driving are deceptively quiet. The mind, lulled into complacency by familiar routines, often misses subtle signals. A shadow flickers, a noise shifts, a silhouette moves in ways that defy logic. These early signs, easily dismissed, are often harbingers of events that escalate rapidly. Truckers share these stories not for thrill alone, but as warnings, as testimony to the unpredictable nature of life on the road. One small misjudgment, one overlooked detail can have consequences that linger for decades. By the time I reached the Nevada border, the darkness had settled into a heavy, almost tangible weight. The highway stretched endlessly, broken only by the dim glow of distant towns or the occasional blinking of a road sign. It was during these long hours, when fatigue creeps in and the mind begins to wander, that the road can play its cruelest tricks. My own experiences have taught me that what you see or think you see can often feel more real than reality itself. One of the earliest stories that still haunts me took place on a particularly long stretch of highway through the Arizona desert. I had been hauling a load of refrigerated goods late at night, the hum of the engine a comforting constant. I pulled off at a remote rest area to take a brief nap, hoping the quiet and darkness would lull me into a deep sleep. The lot was empty, silent except for the occasional rustle of wind or the distant howl of coyotes. Around 2 a.m., I awoke to a faint scratching outside my window. At first, I thought it was an animal, perhaps a fox or a coyote moving in the brush. But the rhythm was too deliberate, too measured to be random. It felt almost sentient. I held my breath, straining to listen. 15 minutes passed. The scratching continued, soft but persistent. My pulse quickened. An instinct screamed at me to leave. I didn't move immediately, fearing that any sudden action might draw whatever it was closer. Finally, I worked up the courage to peek through the curtains. Nothing. The darkness stretched out endlessly, unbroken except for the faint outline of desert brush. When morning came, I discovered footprints leading from the brush right up to my truck and back again. No one else had been there. No tracks besides the ones I saw. The experience left me shaken. A reminder that even the familiar can hide dangers beyond comprehension. Then, there was the incident in California, on SR 58, where I had been practicing astrophotography during a late-night layover. I had parked near the edge of a deserted stretch, adjusting my camera settings under the dim light of the moon. Suddenly, a sound drew my attention. A rustling from below my trailer, subtle at first, then unmistakable. I grabbed a flashlight, scanning the ground. Nothing. I returned to my camera. Minutes later, the sound returned, closer this time, deliberate. And then I heard a voice, soft, casual, almost inviting. Hey. The logical mind wants to dismiss it. A passerby, a prankster, or even fatigue playing tricks. But instinct tells you otherwise. My heart raced as I tried to determine the source, but I could see nothing. The trailer door, which I had left unlocked, shifted slightly as though someone had touched it. Panic overtook caution. I leapt down, bolted to the cab, locked the doors, and sped away. Even now, thinking back, I shiver at how close I came to encountering something I can't explain. Something that defies reason, but leaves an indelible impression on the mind. Tragedy on the road doesn't always involve the inexplicable. Accidents, mechanical failures, and human error create some of the most horrifying scenarios. My uncle, a longtime trucker, once recounted a story that still makes my stomach turn. He was driving a massive rig down a rural road, hauling a low loader with a mechanical digger secured on the back. Everything seemed normal until the safety mechanisms failed. The digger's arms swung wide, striking cars traveling in the opposite lane. In seconds, chaos erupted. 5 people killed instantly, several injured, a scene so gruesome it was likened to a war zone. My uncle was devastated, later hospitalized for severe trauma and delusional guilt, even attempting to take his own life. It was an accident, born not of malice, but of oversight, a stark reminder that even the most mundane jobs can turn deadly in a heartbeat. Human error is terrifying enough, but sometimes it's the randomness of the road that unsettles you. My cousin Jeremiah faced one such moment on Blackwood Highway in Montana. Driving before dawn, he spotted a figure standing in the middle of the road. At first, he thought it was a deer. But as he approached, he realized the figure wore a pig's head, grotesque and lifelike. The arms flailed unnaturally as it lunged toward the truck. Heart racing, he swerved to safety, leaving the figure behind. No explanation exists for what he saw, and he refuses to drive that stretch at night ever since. The experience blurs the line between nightmare and reality, leaving a mark that never fades. Even mundane deliveries can become terrifying. One night, I was hauling cast iron pipes on the outskirts of Cedar City, Utah. The yard was usually deserted after sundown, and as I secured my load, I began to hear low, guttural sounds echoing across the lot. Shadows moved between trailers, shifting in ways that made no sense. Then I saw it. A tall silhouette, motionless, watching me. I froze, unable to determine whether it was human or something else entirely. When dawn finally arrived, it was gone. I never returned after dark. Some places carry a presence you can't see but can feel in every nerve of your body. The stories I've collected over the years share common threads: isolation, vulnerability, and the unexpected. My brother's encounter at a remote desert rest stop involved a woman unloading her dogs from a bright pink Jeep. Minutes later, the Jeep rolled, flipping multiple times and scattering the dogs across the asphalt. My brother rushed to help her, witnessing her focus entirely on the animals, even as her own injuries threatened her life. By the time emergency services arrived, the surrealness of the scene left him shaken. It's moments like these that define life on the road, not just horror in the supernatural sense, but the terrifying unpredictability of existence itself. Trucks are massive machines, yet even they cannot shield you from everything. On Snowshoe Mountain, in Pennsylvania, a flatbed veered out of control, and the driver found himself trapped with a live black bear that had crashed through the windshield. Blood, fur, and adrenaline collided in a scene of pure chaos. The state trooper who intervened had mere seconds to act. These moments serve as stark reminders that safety is relative, and survival often depends on split-second decisions and a measure of luck. Yet, beyond accidents and mechanical failures, the road holds mysteries that defy explanation. Lights reflecting off unseen fires, voices in dead languages over CB radios, convoys of unmarked vehicles. Truckers witness things that leave permanent imprints on the psyche. Some encounters are sinister, some inexplicable, but all contribute to a heightened awareness that nothing on the highway is guaranteed. Every mile carries potential for wonder, horror, and the unknown. One of the most chilling aspects of trucking is the constant tension between routine and unpredictability. Days can pass without incident, lulled into a sense of false security, until a single event shatters that perception. A shadow in the desert, a flicker of movement in an empty yard, an inexplicable sound in the dead of night. These are the triggers that make even the most experienced drivers pause, hearts pounding, instincts razor sharp. These moments teach respect for the unknown and a deep understanding that the road is never entirely safe. The desert at night has a way of stripping away the familiar, leaving only the raw elements: wind, shadows, and your own heartbeat. One story that sticks with me happened in the remote stretches of Navajo country, between Cameron and Page, Arizona. I had pulled off the highway for a quick rest in my sleeper cab, exhausted from hours behind the wheel. The night was deep and quiet, only the occasional gust of wind stirring up the fine sand. Around 2 a.m., a subtle sound roused me. A series of 3 scratches, light but deliberate, coming from right outside my window. At first, I told myself it was the wind, or perhaps a small animal brushing against the truck. But the scratches were rhythmic, measured, almost taunting in their precision. My pulse quickened, and I gripped my knife tightly, feeling a primal unease creep up my spine. I didn't dare peek immediately. 15 minutes passed, and the sound continued. It was close now, just beyond the cab's shadowed outlines, somewhere between the brush and the edge of my headlights. I forced myself to breathe steadily, listening, calculating, and trying to convince my mind to rationalize the impossible. Eventually, I summoned the courage to step outside, boots crunching against the gravel. The desert seemed infinite, untouched and empty. Yet the feeling of being watched was suffocating. The scratches had stopped, but footprints revealed themselves, leading from the brush to my truck and back again. There were no other signs of life. No tracks of a vehicle, no discarded items. Just these prints, like a visitor who vanished into thin air. I never stopped there after dark again. Some places carry a presence you can't understand, and you learn quickly to respect that. Not all horror on the road is supernatural, though. Accidents are terrifying in their own right. My great-uncle once told me a story about a low loader he was hauling in Cornwall, England. On the back of his truck was a mechanical digger, fully secured, or so everyone thought. A tiny oversight, a missing safety pin, a failed strap, turned routine driving into a nightmare. As he navigated the winding country roads, the digger's arm began to swing unpredictably, striking vehicles passing in the opposite lane. 5 people died instantly. Others were injured, and the scene was described as a war zone by first responders. The driver, my great-uncle, was unaware of the devastation he was leaving behind until he was stopped miles later. The shock, guilt, and trauma left him committed to a psychiatric facility. He became withdrawn, whispering names of people he had never met, haunted by the weight of an accident he didn't consciously cause. This story underscores a harsh truth about trucking. Even a single mechanical failure or momentary lapse can have consequences more catastrophic than anyone could imagine. Sometimes, the horror is human, but doesn't come with a predictable pattern. My cousin Jeremiah once shared a story from Blackwood Highway in Montana. Early in the morning, driving through dense forest and sparse traffic, he noticed a figure in the road. Initially thinking it was a deer, he slowed down, only to realize the figure was human and grotesquely wearing a pig's head. Its arms flailed unnaturally as it lunged toward his truck. Heart pounding, Jeremiah swerved to avoid the figure, leaving it behind. The memory of that night never left him. A haunting reminder of how strange and inexplicable encounters on the road can be. Even when there's no threat of supernatural presence or bizarre accidents, the unpredictability of other drivers can create horror. One night on Snowshoe Mountain, Pennsylvania, a flatbed truck lost control at high speed, jackknifing violently. Inside the cab, a black bear had somehow crashed through the windshield. Alive and thrashing, the driver was trapped with the bear clawing, snapping, and attacking, creating a scene of chaos that seemed pulled straight from a nightmare. A state trooper intervened just in time, shooting the bear multiple times, but the driver didn't survive. It's a stark illustration of how raw and violent the world can be when massive machines and living creatures collide. Isolation compounds every horror. Hours or even days can pass with minimal contact, leaving drivers vulnerable to fatigue, fear, and the unexpected. One of the most unsettling stories came from a friend who stopped at a remote truck stop in Nevada. It was late at night, the lot completely deserted. As he secured his load, he noticed shadows moving between trailers. Low, guttural groans echoed through the yard. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, that he wasn't alone. Glancing up, he saw a tall, dark silhouette watching him. It didn't move, didn't blink, only observed. The sight of it sent a chill down his spine. He finished quickly and waited until daylight before leaving. Trucker encounters with the supernatural aren't always malevolent. Sometimes they are subtle, a whisper, a feeling, or a fleeting glimpse. On a lonely stretch in California, I practiced astrophotography on top of my trailer. The wind and rustling leaves accompanied my work until I heard movement beneath me. It was deliberate, careful, and close. A voice, soft but clear, said, "Hey." My logical mind wanted to dismiss it, but my instincts told me to flee. I grabbed my gear, jumped down, locked the cab, and drove away. I never saw who or what it was. Experiences like these linger, creating a sense of vigilance and respect for the unknown. Even animals can be part of terrifying encounters. On one trip, my brother witnessed a woman in a bright pink Jeep crash at a remote desert rest stop. She was unloading several small dogs when the jeep rolled multiple times, flinging the animals across the pavement. He rushed to her aid, seeing her prioritize the dog's survival over her own injuries. Emergency crews arrived, focused on the human survivor, while the dogs were left lifeless on the road. It was a scene of surreal horror, a collision of tragedy, shock, and human instinct. Some experiences blend human unpredictability with mechanical danger. A trucker recounted a near disaster while hauling cast iron pipes on the outskirts of Cedar City. The lot was silent after dark, yet as he strapped down his load, low, guttural tapping echoed from between trailers. Shadows moved without explanation, and a tall silhouette seemed to watch him. He finished as quickly as possible, leaving before dawn. It's a reminder that even routine tasks, like securing a load, can become life-altering when the environment turns threatening. Other drivers report strange occurrences on highways, sometimes bordering on the impossible. Lights that appear in the desert without source. Vehicles forcing others off the road, or unmarked convoys at night, all contribute to the unpredictable and dangerous atmosphere truckers navigate. On Mexican highways, drivers have encountered checkpoints manned by unknown men, tunnels beneath roads, and situations that defy explanation. Many keep these stories to themselves, knowing that others might dismiss them. But for the drivers, the experiences leave permanent marks. Highway horror can also stem from inattention and split-second events. On SR 58 in California, a trucker's flatbed shifted dangerously due to a minor mechanical failure, causing debris to scatter across lanes. Even a small miscalculation can result in destruction and loss of life. On Snowshoe Mountain, Pennsylvania, a single driver's lapse combined with natural hazards and wildlife created one of the most horrifying moments anyone could witness. The sheer unpredictability of the road, paired with heavy machinery, human error, and wildlife, creates conditions where ordinary journeys can become nightmares. Even after decades on the road, some memories never fade. A stretch of highway can hold both the mundane and the terrifying. Shadows that linger, noises that defy explanation, and moments when instinct is the only thing standing between safety and disaster. Trucks may be built for strength, but they can't shield against fatigue, human error, or the unpredictable world beyond the windshield. I've seen accidents that leave lasting scars, encounters that challenge belief, and situations that force you to confront your own mortality. From mechanical failures with devastating consequences to eerie figures in the desert and animal attacks that defy imagination, the highway is a theater of both horror and survival. Every mile carries risk. Every night holds unknown threats. And every stop may conceal dangers unseen. The road is relentless, unforgiving, and often surreal. But it also teaches vigilance, respect, and the stark truth. Life can change in a single terrifying moment.